We're joined now by Senator David Leyonhjelm, who's the Liberal Democratic Party Senator for New South Wales. Senator, welcome.
Thank you.
There are 8 crossbench senators. You're one of them. Now, the dynamic there has changed since Jackie Lambie has departed from Palmer United. Now you've been back, Parliament's been back. What's your perception of how those 8 senators align or don't align?
It's still a work in progress very much, obviously, and I think it'll be different in 3 months' time from what it is now.
Yeah.
But as it stands today, Ricky Muir seems to be doing his own thing. Mm-hmm. That's a change as well. Jackie's doing her own thing, and obviously not aligned with the other pups. Dio, Wang and Glenn Lazarus are sticking together, voting together, so that's a pairing. Bob Day and I mostly vote together, although not invariably, but mostly we see things as, the same way, so we're kind of a 2-vote block.
Yeah.
But there is no 3-vote block, and that's what's changed. Previously, the government needed to get the 3-vote or the 4-vote block, as it was with the pups and Ricky Muir, before it could get anything through. That's now evaporated. Even if they go to Clive, even if they get Clive to sign up to it, and as a result they get Dio and Glenn on board, there's only 2 votes in it, and so they're going to have to negotiate with a more diverse group of people.
So, depending on the issue, they might think, oh, OK, we'll go to you first, or they might think, well, we'll go to Nick Xenophon, or depending on the issues, that's how it's playing out, you think?
That's exactly how it will work, yes.
And from your perception, Ricky Muir and Jackie Lambie a duo, a bit of a block, or are they kind of quite disparate?
No, I think it'll be issue by issue. I don't see any indication that they're going to work closely together as a sort of a general policy. Jackie's still feeling her way. She's only just left PUP, and I think it was a pretty difficult decision. She and Clive had always had a fairly fractious relationship, so having a fight was nothing new. The question was whether this was going to be a terminal fight. It's kind of like family fights. Families always fight, but then they don't split. They just don't talk for a week and then they get back together again. So it was always the possibility that might occur, but Clive's probably a fairly unforgiving party leader, and I think he prompted her to go.
There's been some analysis that suggests that Nick Xenophon's going to be very influential, I think because of what happened with FOFA last week, but also he's got a great deal of experience in sort of balance of power politics going back to the South Australian state parliament. Is that a fair enough sort of analysis, you think?
Yes, there is a distinct possibility. He was pretty influential in getting Ricky and Jackie on side on the FOFA disallowance motion. And yes, he could easily be influential. He's a nice, affable guy, can be very persuasive. The only thing is he does like being independent himself, doesn't like being tied down, doesn't have a firm ideology or set of principles, if you like. He's issue by issue driven. So I don't think he will be able to appeal to either Jackie or Ricky on the basis of I'm pro this, I'm generally in favour of government doing this, I'm generally opposed to government doing that. Nick takes it issue by issue, and that makes it more problematic for him to bring Jackie or Ricky in. They are likely to be issue by issue as well, although Jackie's driven by certain issues, Tasmania, for example, and the Defence Force personnel. Ricky has issues of his own, but he's also still just finding his feet.
So for the government, as you said, previously the government's first step would be to go to Palmer United. If it could secure 4 votes, then it would then go to the rest. Does this make it much more difficult for the government, not just in strategy, but the fact that there's 8 senators, most of whom want their moment in the sun, if I can put it like that, want some media attention, most of you, in a sense, so that's going to make it very difficult for the government? Am I...
Not necessarily, it may be easier.
Yeah.
Previously, if Clive didn't approve, it didn't happen. And so those sort of moments won't occur now. There won't be any, unless there's a block of 3 forms, there won't be anybody with that power to say, no, it's not going to happen. It'll still take 3 votes to stop something, but you don't know where they're going to come from. So no, the only thing I think that limits the government in terms of taking advantage of the situation is their capacity to negotiate. They are very patchy. Sometimes they're very good, and sometimes you wonder what on earth they're thinking.
Do you think they're getting better?
Individual ministers are figuring it out, but as a government, no, they're not.
Okay.
They're not getting any better.
To one of the issues of the day, the cuts to the ABC. Now, there's a lot of people sort of saying this is terrible, but what's your position on cutting to the ABC?
There's 2 things, 2 views. One is I'm philosophically opposed to taxpayers paying for something that the private sector will provide. The ABC, vast majority of what it does, the private sector will provide it. So news, current affairs, the sort of entertainment shows that they provide, online, a vast array of online services. The private sector's in there competing with them, or they're competing with the private sector. Using taxpayers' money, I disapprove of that. I don't think it's like having a government-owned bank or a government-owned airline or a pharmaceutical company or whatever, government-owned fish and chip shops. It makes no sense, So I don't think they should be involved in those areas where the private sector will get involved.
So you welcome these sort of cuts?
Yeah, well, I would like the ABC to be restructured so it either is sold, privatised one way or another, or it accepts external revenue from advertising or subscriptions like the BBC in the UK, something along those lines. So it's not being paid for by taxpayers, and including taxpayers who don't watch it. I mean, a majority of people don't watch the ABC, and yet they all pay for it. The other side of it, though, is whether these particular cuts make sense. If you're running a business and you have to make cuts because you've got less revenue coming in, or your expenses have gone up, and you're not making your targets or whatever, the last thing you do is adversely affect your customers. You will sack the accountants, you will sack the office cleaners, you will sack the bosses, but you don't sack your salespeople or your customer service people. You don't do that. Your customers are the lifeline of your business. The ABC's customers are its viewers. And some of them, many of them, millions of people love the ABC. You don't spit in their face just because the government doesn't do what you want it to do. You go and cut behind the scenes. You go and cut out the fat. You go and cut the salaries. There are people on the ABC payroll who get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for presenting a half-hour show a week. It's insane. There's lots of scope there for cutting back. So if I was the ABC management, I would be absolutely protecting the stuff that has contact with their customers, with their viewers, the people who rely on them.
So your criticism then, if I can paraphrase, is not the government for cutting the ABC, but the ABC management for the way it's implemented those cuts?
Absolutely. They'd all get a big fail if they work for a company. It's a silly approach. I mean, if a bank was trying to cut back, the last thing they would do is cut back the people who are bringing in their business.
And it's almost a separate issue. There's the cuts to the ABC, but there's also the issue of the Prime Minister's making a promise before the election that the ABC and SBS would not be cut. What do you make of that?
There's a dumb thing to say, and I think he should just say, sorry, I shouldn't have said it, and move on. He should stop denying that he said it and stop saying it's a breach of a promise. Of course it's a breach of a promise. It's a silly promise to make in the first place. I don't know what on earth he was thinking. I think it was just a thought bubble on that day. He should just say, sorry, I got it wrong, and move on.
Okay, Senator David Leyonhjelm, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.